back to another episode of the Wet Dreamz Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez. I'm a mental health counselor and a sex therapist.
I'm Dr. Brad Hinman. I am a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and a certified sex therapist.
Sweet. Today we're talking about step 5 of our model. Last time it was, defining the problem. So we've gone through a couple of steps. Initially our model is for guys that are struggling with out of control sexual behavior, porn, online behaviors, sex addiction, that kind of stuff, which is mainly the people we see and their partners. And we created this model, and the first couple steps were like creating distance from the behavior, whether that be porn, whether that be the other behaviors. That's with putting up boundaries, putting up like monitoring software on your phones, having people accountable to your actions, that kind of stuff. And then we kind of dig in deeper to defining what the actual problem is. A lot of our guys think like, oh, it's just a matter of habit, which part of it is true. You're trying to create better habits, but that's not the only problem. Mm-hmm. You can't just go straight to the behaviors and be like, okay, I'm just going to not get into the habit of not doing it. Then I'm cured. It's more than that. So this step 5 is disassembling. We're kind of breaking down the habits that guys have and the coping skills that they're using, and breaking down the underlying layers and all that stuff of why they're using that behavior, or whether it be some from trauma in the past, whether it be just negative experiences with sex and in general. So now we're getting a little bit deeper and deepening where we're coming from. So why do you think it's important to go deeper into not just the habits, not just the behaviors, but what is driving them? Why do you think it's important?
Well, the people that come to see us that have out of control sexual behaviors like porn and other sexual behaviors, they're using the sexual behavior as a coping mechanism. And so they're using that to help them feel better, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they got yelled at work, or maybe they didn't take the trash out, so their partner's mad at them. And so they feel bad, and so then they use to feel better. And it works. That's why people do it. Mm-hmm. And that's why they do it frequently, is because it works. I always use the example, nobody's addicted to eating broccoli, right? Because it doesn't work. It doesn't, I guess in the long run, it's supposedly, it helps us feel better.
But pleasurable as like a Snickers bar or something.
Yes, correct. Yep. Or porn. It's not as pleasurable as porn. And so it's important to go deeper and really tease out like what they're trying to cope with, what they're trying to feel better from. Right. So typically it's some kind of initial trauma that they experience. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's what I call little T trauma. Yeah. So it's not like you weren't locked in a box for 8 years in the basement, right, and being thrown breadcrumbs to eat. That would be big T trauma.
Right.
And so, but your brain doesn't really care. Like trauma is trauma. And so sometimes people get stuck in that trauma and they're trying to cope with whatever that little T trauma was, or big T trauma.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to kind of dig down and dig deeper and figure out, I tell people, go back, find that little boy, because we both mainly work with men, right? So go back and find that little boy and bring him forward to today, helping him realize that he's not still there experiencing that trauma. Mm-hmm. And now you're a big grown adult and you can do things to defend yourself and take care of business, right? So you're not going to be traumatized again.
Yeah.
In that way.
For sure. So, how often do our guys have trauma, and what does that kind of trauma look like? It's funny, like as we're talking about it, it's just an interesting concept of like, it goes back to your trauma. And I think a lot of the guys that we talk to wouldn't necessarily characterize something as being traumatic.
Yep.
And even acknowledge that there is a trauma. Something about that is not masculine to be like, oh, you went through trauma or you went through sexual trauma. No, that's not what men do. I don't even know what the thought is, but it's hard to like even admit that trauma. It wasn't trauma. It was just kind of like a light beating or something, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna downplay it. So that concept is an interesting. Like they have trauma. The guys that we talk to, and there's often have a lot of them have trauma. Like, and that's pretty common. You're saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't realize it's trauma and don't call it trauma, that's also common.
Right.
So it's, for example, a lot of the guys that I work with have been sexually abused, but they don't call it sexual abuse. It kind of comes out when I say, tell me about your first sexual experience. And then they share with me that they were a child, and then the person that they had a sexual experience with was either much older or not even a child. And I'm thinking in my head, this is sexual abuse you're describing, but they're not describing it as sexual abuse. They're describing it as their first sexual experience, right? And so other kinds of things like that, other than sexual abuse, would be like neglect, being kind of ignored, not nurtured and taken care of as a child. Just kind of being left to fend for yourself, like you're this feral child running around, taking care of yourself. Being like the scapegoat of the family, so being like picked on, or like everything in the family is your fault, right? That would be another form of, but that's chronic over the whole time you're growing up. So that can be pretty traumatic.
Yes, and that's an important distinction too. It's like, trauma, I think when most people think of trauma as an individual event or this big event that happened,
right.
But trauma is also a chronic neglect or chronic not getting your emotional needs met over a period of time. It may not be severe in that like they were like, you're a fucking scum, and they told you that every day for 20 years. Like it may not be that severe, but there's levels to it of like, okay, you weren't safe to share your feelings more often than not, more days than not, over a 15-year period of time, you didn't feel safe to do that. Like that's still a form of trauma, and it's over time. It's not necessarily one event that happened or whatever.
And there's an element, so yes to that, and there's an element of, with a lot of the guys that I work with, of it does what I call gets in to their head, right? Yeah, so it, like, some part of them believes whatever they were told as a child, that they were scum, then they believe that, and then they start telling themselves that, right? So it got in and they believe it. So now they're perpetuating their own trauma because they're repeating those messages that they heard.
Yep, exactly. Right. So it's important to, I think that's one of the things that begins to take shape in guys that I see is like starting to reframe of like, oh yeah, that was kind of traumatic, or like that did do a number on me, or that did affect me, then hiding out in my room and just watching porn all the time, or me going to a massage parlor and looking for some kind of touch that's not intimate or emotional or whatever, or looking for, insert sexual behavior here, but they start realizing like, oh shoot, there was something going on here before that's kind of influenced this, and it was traumatic for me.
Well, and that's where to me the word disassembling comes from. Is this stage is that we have to start, as therapists, have to start teaching them that yes, this horrible thing happened to you, and it was a horrible thing. So getting them to realize this was horrible, and I should just call it horrible and not try to be a man and hide that, right? But then also you're doing this thing, for example, porn, and your partner doesn't like that. So that also causes problems in your life. So you're doing a thing to cope with the problem in your life, but that thing also creates problems.
Right.
So
Yeah.
why do we keep doing
Right.
that?
And potentially causing trauma in your partner, because
Yes.
now there's this association of like, is he lying to me, or he does this? This means that he was being unfaithful. I remember that, like it's traumatic for the partner then too.
Right.
You're just creating more trauma.
Yeah. And so the disassembling part is like, just helping them realize this coping mechanism is lying to you. It's not working the way you thought that it was working, because it's creating more trauma, right?
Mhm.
It's creating trauma to deal with the trauma that you already experienced.
Right.
And so we have to kind of take that apart and get them to realize this is not your friend. This compulsive sexual behavior that you're experiencing is not doing you any favors. It did in the beginning, sort of, maybe.
Right.
Until now, when it's ruining your life. And so now you're going to have that trauma to deal with. But then it perpetuates. See, like this compulsive sexual behavior that we deal with in our clients it's kind of a self-perpetuating problem, because it creates a problem that makes you feel bad. So then you use to feel better, but then the using to feel better makes you feel bad.
Right. Which continues the problem, the created problem. Yeah. It's just a cycle, definitely. You have to get off of the train or whatever, use metaphor, like, for sure. Do you find that, how do your guys, answer as well, but how do your guys deal with or respond to when you're starting to get into the trauma, or like talking about the trauma in general? Like, how do our guys typically respond to that when you're starting to get into that stuff?
At first, they kind of minimize it. They'll say things like, well, I wasn't, beaten with, whatever.
Right. Wasn't that bad?
Yeah, it wasn't that. That's what they try to say, stuff like that.
Yep.
It wasn't that bad. At least it wasn't this.
Right.
And I'm like, but it was bad.
Right. Right.
Right.
It wasn't good.
Yeah, that wasn't good. Right. What happened to you? And they can recognize typically that it wasn't good. But then there's all these like masculine messages of, I should just suck it up and be a man and grow a pair and whatever.
Or like, you should have.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything about it, so then you must have wanted it or whatever, especially with sexual abuse. Like,
yes,
I could have done something about it, but I didn't. So clearly, whatever,
And that's huge. That's a huge piece of this, is the I should have part. I say to guys, like, stop shooting on yourself, right? Like, it's, because that word should, I wish it was banned from the English language, but because it just creates shame. Right. Yeah. Like it's, I should have done this, or I should have spoken up, or I should have told somebody, or I should have stopped it, or I should have kicked him in the nuts or whatever. Like, like you can't go back and change that. You can say, in the future, I'm going to do something different if I get in a position like this again, but you can't go back and fix that. So you're like saying, I should have done this. You're just banging your head against the wall. But it's a huge piece of the mental, like the mental struggle that our clients have. Well,
and somehow that, I'm sure that's a thing, but somehow saying that then nullifies the effect that it has on, you know what I mean? Like, okay, sure, maybe I still don't like saying should. I'm going to say could, but let's assume that you should have done something. Does it matter? Because the thing happened, it affected your life, and you're using unhealthy coping skills to mask that initial trauma that you had. That still doesn't change,
right?
But somehow in our mind, it's like, oh, I should have done something. So, okay, I deserve what happened to me, basically. That's kind of what they're saying. You know what I mean? It's like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah. Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you can't change the past, and that still doesn't diminish the problem, the trauma that you experienced, right?
Yeah. So often our guys initially are kind of like resistant and like minimizing and stuff like that. What tends to happen as you continue in your experience or whatever?
I think the repeating it and continuing to talk about it, they start to realize the lies that this coping mechanism has told them, right? So eventually the light bulb comes on, if you will, right? They start to realize, yeah, this is important. This thing did happen to me, and and it did bother me, and it still bothers me, right? And so creating a narrative where, if I get put in a similar situation, I'm going to react this way and practice that and talk about that. So this, the answer to your question,
Mm-hmm.
what then happens is this realization starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they realize not only what am I going to do differently in the future, but I'm still an okay person in spite of this happening to me. And I don't need to use a negative coping mechanism to make myself feel better. We can use healthy coping mechanisms. And I've had clients say to me, well, you're just wanting me to swap one addiction for another.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's not a coping mechanism or an addiction that causes problems in your life.
Right.
Like work can be an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Church can be an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships can be an addiction.
Right.
Right. Healthy, positive relationships can also be an addiction. So sure, like exercise can be an addiction.
Right.
So start developing something as a coping mechanism that's healthy. And then you'll still be getting your needs met. You'll still be coping, but it'll be in a healthy way.
Right. Right. And it's not ruining your relationship or your marriage or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Do you one thought that came to my mind that I've heard some is in this area of trauma of like if you just like going to therapy or whatever and uncovering these things, like if you just would have kept a lid on that, like it's the therapy, it's the talking to the counselor now that all this shit is coming out, like I should have just kept a lid on it. Like that's why did I bring it up? Because now it's just making my life bad. I've heard that. I don't know if you've heard
yes.
that. Yeah,
yes.
like, and almost to the degree of like, well, it's your counselor that's making you this come out. He like talked to you about this stuff. Like he shouldn't know. He putting it in your head. I've had something to that degree with people. Like I'm like, oh, okay, don't be mad at me, man.
So it's your doctor's fault that he found cancer.
Right.
Like
100%.
Because that's the logic, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's and I have heard that even from my own family members. Like they won't go to the doctor because they don't want to know what's wrong. And I'm like, it's already wrong.
Right. So I'm pointing it out as not making that more wrong. It's just
they
it's already
think
been
going
wrong.
to the doctor is gonna make a problem happen. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. So yeah, going to a therapist, we can uncover like reasons why you are thinking and acting the way you're thinking and acting, but we didn't create that problem. We're just labeling it and identifying it and helping you navigate through that. But sure, yes, I have.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you didn't have this problem before you started talking to a therapist, and it was there.
It was there. I promise you, it was
Yeah.
there.
I was just internalizing it,
Right.
and dealing with it in my own coping mechanism
Right.
way. I wasn't talking about it verbally.
Right. And if I had the power to do that, I'd be rich.
Right.
Like I would just be putting things in people's heads all the time. Like,
yeah. We'd be creating problems all over the place and then solving them.
I'd be a gajillionaire.
Yeah.
But I think and then I bring it up because it's a valid, I think part of it is the fear. And a lot of times with the guys that come in, they're like, this is something that they haven't explored or a new angle that they've, especially, sometimes if they're seeing their family in a different way or seeing their past relationships in a different way, it's scary because it's like, okay, this is new. And like, this is not how I saw this person, or I see this person as good. I can't they didn't traumatize me or I just don't want to see it at all. It's fear for something changing, fear for something new, and scary that like, oh, what's going to happen with that? I don't really want to touch that stuff because who knows, this Pandora's box kind of opens up and I'm in a whirlwind of feeling now, and when I wasn't before, so it's valid. I get it,
And that's a real thing as well. Like your family, your relationship, in marriage and family therapy, we call it a system, right? And systems don't like change. Systems resist change. And so if one person is in therapy and they're learning new ways to cope with things and they're learning to talk about the things that are bothering them instead of acting out in a negative way, that's going to change that system, the way that
Mhm.
system operates. And so now we don't have somebody to blame for all of our problems.
Mhm.
So we might have to face them ourselves. And that makes me uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So you need to go back to being this addict who's manipulative and, controlling everybody and
Yeah.
whatever. And then
Yeah.
it's all your fault.
Right.
So when that person gets better, the
Mhm.
system tends to not like it. That's why I encourage, like for the guys that I see, I encourage their partner to also be in individual therapy. And then I encourage them to be in couples therapy as well.
Mhm.
Because if one person is changing, the system doesn't like that.
Right. And by itself. And that's a good point, like to, people listening or whatever, like in this process, especially around this point in time of recovery or whatever, it's important to know that there will be some changes, and like whether that be you're confronting trauma and you get more emotions. And I mean, things oftentimes get worse before they get better. So if you're scratching the surface now of this scab of trauma, there's going to be some blood, unfortunately. So that's something to expect. And also the pushback from partners, if you're trying to get healthy and you're like pushing to try to do new things, it may be a bit uncomfortable, especially for your partner or for the relationship. It might be, like you said, it's good to have those different therapies to help, but just expect the changes to happen, and there may be some resistance there. You know what I mean? I think that's important to note here.
Yeah, it is. It is important to know, and it's important for them to be prepared that change is uncomfortable, change is scary, right? But I tell my clients, you've done scary things before, and you've come out fine, right? So something scary or big or hard or difficult is not a reason not to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. So trauma's I think that's the big part of this step, disassembling, that we're trying to disassemble in our guys. What else are we disassembling? You talked about the lies that porn tells us, but what other things are we breaking apart from our guys in this kind of step?
The pattern, breaking apart the pattern that they've established, that, something negative happens. Let's say at work. We always blame the partners. Let's say at work.
There we go. That's a good one.
Something negative happens at work, and then the pattern is, so I'm going to talk like I'm my own client, right? Like, so something bad happens to me at work, and then I think, yeah, that's because I'm a bad person, right? Because of these negative messages that I got growing up, right? Like that I suck. So, right. Yep. So something new happens at work, and I'm like, see, you suck. That's why that happened. That's why that happened now. That's why it happened then. Right. So our brain, the pattern is that our brain puts those together, and the answer is because I suck. Right. And so then that's what I meant earlier in the podcast today when I said it gets in, right? So something now external to me is happening, and that is combined with the thing that was already got into my brain as a child or whatever. And so then we need to disrupt that pattern, right? That if something bad happened at work, maybe your boss is just having a bad day, right? Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with you. Maybe his dog is dying. And so then the boss took it out on you at work because his dog's dying, right? So it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you suck. It just means that your boss is having a bad day.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Like that's what I mean, like disrupting that pattern.
Yep.
That it doesn't have to all come back to this, which is the cause of the trauma that you're trying to deal with and cope with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, part of the work is recognizing those patterns, the triggers, and what your brain goes to, what's the thought that your brain goes back to, like, I'm terrible, or, I am not enough, or whatever. Like, I think part of the process is recognizing that. And one of the tools we use, and I probably will try to put in the show notes, but it's like the reaction sequence, like from the time that you get triggered to use porn or any of these sexual behaviors to the time that you actually engage in the behavior. It could be like a millisecond, 10 seconds, whatever. It could be such a short time, but there's so much happening from when you're getting triggered to when you actually decide to use. So taking that example, if from the time that something bad happens at work, even to the time that you think, oh, I suck, there's things happening there. And then from there to the time that you maybe sneak out at lunch and like, oh, let me just watch porn in the bathroom at work. There's a lot going on from there till actually doing the behavior, but it often feels so fast of like, oh, this happened, I suck. Now I'm like watching porn 2 seconds later, like, whoa. And then that's a lot of guys are like, oh, what? I woke up after I came, to be honest. And you're like, oh, you're like, the post-nut clarity, as they call it. You know, you're like, what the hell happened? Yeah. But there was so many steps in between there, you know.
Yeah, they're like, I wasn't gonna do this anymore, right? They kind of wake up after or even during the process of using, and so it just doesn't have to be that way, right? Like we don't have to follow that same pattern always. We can choose to do something else, but like you were saying, there's a lot that lives in those few seconds between getting yelled at work by your boss and your decision to use. It can just be a few seconds sometimes, or it can be hours or days. Yeah. But typically people don't realize that in that space is your ability to change what you're doing, right? To change that pattern or change that cycle or whatever word you want to use there, right? That there's a lot that lives in there. That's when you should choose to do something else, or that's when you can choose to talk to yourself differently, that stop telling yourself that you suck, right? Like it's, you can choose to make different choices right then in that space that will lead to different consequences, different outcomes for you. And it won't harm your relationship, and it won't harm your own standards that you've set for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about that part of it, because that's kind of like the next step of like putting in the more healthy coping skills or whatever. But it's important, again, to break down like, this is a facade. It's all lies. It's all just like a mirage of like, something bad happened, like porn's right there to give you water in the desert. And now you get there and you're like, I'm more thirsty because there's actually nothing was there. You know what I mean? Like, now I feel I'm thirsty and I feel shitty about myself. Like, it's all lies.
It's a house of cards or whatever you want to call it, right? It's fake. It's not it's not real, you know, because often guys do that because they feel like somebody's paying attention to them. They feel like they matter, and that's all lies. You don't matter to the people in porn. You don't matter to the people online that you're talking to, or whatever you're trying to do. You don't matter to those people. And so it's all lies. It's not real.
Right. And even like, yeah, you can apply that to most sexual behaviors. Porn, they don't know you. Nobody knows you. The person in the massage parlor, they can see 10 people a day. No, they don't care about you, even if you're a regular. You know, even in some ways, this is a little different, I don't know, but even an affair partner, like, that's not a true representation of anything. It's just like in the moment, like they have their own life, they have their own kids, they have their own family, that it's not real. If it's like, oh, if I leave my wife to go with this person, like, you're getting this small percentage of the picture of what life is like. Like, that's not real. Right. You know what I mean? None of that is real.
It is not real. Like, even affair partners, that's something that we haven't talked about a lot. But like, if that person knows that you are in a relationship and knows that you're cheating, what kind of person does that? They don't really care about you, do they? Right? Because they know that they're ruining your life and are helping you ruin your life or whatever. They don't care about you, right? The people on apps that you hook up with, they don't care about you. Right?
People on OnlyFans, they give a shit about you.
No, they want your money. It's all about the money. I've met people that are on OnlyFans and they don't care. They tell me that they don't care about you. They will tell you that they care about you so they get your money, but they don't care. Right. They're talking to 20 people at the same time. And so you're just a number to them. And the number is starts with an S with the dollar with the little lines in front of it.
Exactly. For sure. Yeah, and it's not to, I always want to give a disclaimer, it's not to disparage anybody in the sex working industry or any of that stuff. That's not the point. The point is the guys that we talk to have staked their entire freaking lives or their entire existence or their entire happiness, whatever. They've staked their entire happiness and existence on this thing. It's not what you want. It's not what it's cracked up to be. It's not what you think it's going to be for you. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of the disassembling of, like, stake your energy on other things that are actually helping you, that are actually important, that are actually enriching your life, that are actually building whatever, you know what I mean? Don't do it with that, Anyways.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to disparage sex workers either. Because it's just a job. Like they don't. My statement of they don't care still stands. Yeah. Even though I'm not trying to disparage that job, because it's a job.
Yes.
They don't care, right? You're paying them to care, and they care as long as you're paying them. but they don't care in the way you think that they care, right, the way you want them to care.
Exactly. So, and the way you need someone to care. Yeah. Like, no. Anyway, sorry, I don't know if that was off the track. Like, get going, we're moving, but so yeah, I think again, it's just that's really the goal of this step is to break down some of those lies, break down those patterns, see it for what it is. Like, it's a coping skill, and it's something that, while it started when you were in a maybe traumatic situation, or while it was out of your control initially. Like, now you're choosing to continue that pattern, and it's not serving you any purpose now. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's see it for what it is, for sure.
And that is something that I talk to clients about too, that it worked when it worked, but now it's not working anymore. So change it, right? Like it's, it served a purpose. Maybe it got you out of, let's say you had a traumatic childhood and it helped you survive that childhood and go to adulthood, but you don't need that anymore, right? You need other coping mechanisms, grown-up coping mechanisms, right? Like exercise and stuff like that is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
That so you can acknowledge that was helpful when it was helpful, but now it's causing problems for you. So don't keep doing something that's causing problems. You're making it worse.
Yep. Exactly. For sure. Yeah. Any words of wisdoms for our guys that are listening there in this step, whether it's dealing with trauma or you're starting to get kind of see the light, if you will, whatever, like, what are some things our guys should think of around this time in their recovery or their journey or whatever?
I think telling yourself the truth, right? Like, I encourage my clients to, like, when a thought pops in their heads, like I suck, asking yourself, is this true? Right? Like, don't believe everything you think, right?
Yeah.
Especially about yourself.
Yes.
Right. That just kind of questioning, is this true? And if it is true, because sometimes something you think might be true, right? Then what am I going to do about that? Right? What do I need to change? What do I need to work on? What is my goal around this? Right? The problem is people think, well, this thing happened, so then that means that I suck, and then you just stay in the suck, right? Like, you set up camp there, and this is now your house.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Like if you made a bad decision, like at work or whatever, then do something to fix that. Don't just stay in the suck, right? So that's, I guess, my advice. Don't stay in the suck.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. That's good. Yeah, the other thing I like to emphasize around this time is, like, and I think I probably stole that from you. I don't know. Most likely, most things I steal from you.
Yes.
But this idea of, like, the way I always present it with clients is, like, the surface level versus the deeper level. Whenever I'm treating someone or whatever, I'm thinking of both levels. Like, on the surface level, there's the behavior stuff, the accountability, talking to people, going to a group, so the behavior level of stuff that you're doing to try to get out of this addiction and stuff like that. but then there's also the deeper level of like the why and what's driving the behavior. Like, what are you getting out of the behavior? Like I always say, and this is your example, if someone is in a cave without internet access, sure, they're going to make the choices not to use porn easy because there's no access. But the minute they come out of that cave and gain internet access again, they're going to go right back to their patterns and their routine of behavior if they haven't dealt with the underlying level, and it's only been like a behavioral thing. So I think it's important here to like pushing to the why. Why am I doing this? Like, what am I getting out of it? Like, it's more than just the behavior. You know, why do I use this type of porn versus other types of porn? Like, is that significant? Like, why am I saying these words? Like, does that remind me of something that's happened, or is that significant? Like, it's like questioning in a similar way, but pushing further to the why, but why? You know, that's the big thing I tell my guys. Like, why? I keep saying why until you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can't go anymore. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, until you figure out what's really at the core of it. What's really pushing that? Right? Yeah. It's, and really, I think a lot of it is what's driving that. What really is at the core of the things that I hear are like, I need for acceptance, a need for validation, to be told that I'm good enough, I'm worthy. That's really what they're seeking, right? So find somebody that will tell you that verbally, right? That sits next to you on the couch while you're watching movies, exactly. Right? That you matter and that you're valid, and you know, that, exactly, because that's going to work way better than some random website, where the people don't care.
Exactly, for sure. Yeah, don't get stuck in the suck.
Yes.
I like that. That's a good one. That's going to be the name of the episode, I think. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys being around and listening. And obviously, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, hit us up on our socials, Wet Dreamz with a Z, on all platforms. And we always look forward to getting feedback, and just appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
The Wet Dreamz Podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.